So I'm here with Paul Tonsager, and Paul is a farmer, retired dairy farmer though.
Yep.
And the tractor behind you is your favorite, isn't it?
Yep, my 1206. I started with a 1206 like this way back in mid-70s, and got kind of caught up in that interest rate insanity of the early 80s and had to shut down, and then that's back in Minnesota. And then we moved here in 1990 and started the dairy operation again. And then we milked cows from 1990 up until about 8 years ago when we sold the cows out again. Then I've just been cash cropping and running a few beef cows since then.
Yeah. And so this isn't the original 1206 you had?
Nope. I picked this tractor up from Ellsworth Equipment in about 1992, used then. I've went through it and kind of rebuilt it now just because it's got good value yet, and then thinking about getting it repainted here in the near future.
So then, that was back when it was Hoyka then, right?
No. Oh,
you mean back when they were on the other side of town?
Well, when they were on the other side, they moved into Ellsworth in the about 1991, I think, when they moved from the west side of town.
I think 93. I bet it was 93.
Maybe it was 93 then.
Yep.
Because then they started running that in town there, and then of course then they moved back out there again after a while. So, but yeah. I mean, before Johnson Tractor took over.
Yep. So is that a Julian Walsingham sticker on there, or what's left of one?
I don't know.
So Julian Walsingham, that's Durand Implement. Okay. That
was probably a sticker they had on because Durand Implement run the Ellsworth Equipment when they're on the east end of town.
Yeah, it was MDMA.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so this was in the early 90s. You bought this from them.
Yep.
Okay. Is that original paint?
All original.
Yeah.
I've never had it repainted yet, so.
Okay. How many hours are on her?
12,000.
Okay. And look, you've had the engine apart then.
Yeah, the engine lasted till just a little over 10,000 hours, and then it got rebuilt. It all of a sudden used oil really hard. I mean, within a few days, I was cutting hay and it went from using not very much oil to using a gallon an hour. And I said, whoops, something went busted. I thought the turbo went out, but actually the rings did.
Okay.
Danny Fisher rebuilt the engine at that time.
Yeah.
And then I had the new TA and a bunch of some transmission work done to it here in the last a year and a half ago from Brad Homestead over there.
Okay. Yeah.
So it is pretty good shape right now as far as operating. Everything's nice and tight yet. The tin's nice and straight, so it'll look good when it gets a new paint job.
It's a later 1206. I mean, it's the gold emblem one, not the white decal or silk screen or whatever. You know what year it is?
Not for sure, no.
Okay. Okay. Your first one then, was that the same? Was it a...
Yep.
Okay. Where'd that one come from?
That one come from over in New Prague, Minnesota, H&W Equipment.
Okay.
I did a lot of business with them back in that time.
What year would you have bought that one?
That would have been 1978.
Okay. So that was a 1206, pretty good sized tractor in 1978.
Yep, it was kind of interesting to be a young man to be on that tractor at that time.
Did you ever pull it?
Nope, never did. They sure liked using them though.
Yeah.
That was when they first started tractor pulling. The 1206 was kind of the mainstay on the pulling track.
Yeah, they were quite a tractor. You know.
Easy to turn them up. There's one little screw inside of a door and you turn them up and they're smoking like crazy.
So were you always an IH tractor guy?
Yeah, I've always been IH. I hate to tell this to the John Deere guys, but they're a lot more fuel efficient. And I can own 2 Internationals at once, so if one broke down, I could still run, and that's not because they broke down all the time, just because you could afford to do that. All of them break down, so.
Oh, yeah.
I needed to have a tractor to chop hay with and get for my cattle to get the feed done in the right time, so that's why I did that.
So then when you bought this one, so, well, I guess we should explain. So you moved over here in 1990, like you said.
Yep.
And started. Did you bring some machinery with you?
Well, an 1650 Oliver and two 720 John Deeres, so I started pretty small.
Okay. Well, speaking of fuel efficiency, a 720 diesel is one of the most fuel efficient tractors they'll ever build.
I agree.
Yeah, they'll run on hopes and dreams, really.
Yep. You could put 20 gallons of fuel in one of them and run 2 days with it, probably.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's where they were good. But, so then, over in Minnesota, were you farming over there at the time?
I had a dairy herd over there. We started in 1978 when I got married. The interest rate when I started in 1978 for operating money was about 8.5%. And in 1982, when I sold the cows the first time, I paid 23.5% interest when I paid off the cow note when I closed down the dairy at that time. There was no way in the world anybody could make that happen. It was just insane for that setup. And I was all rented at the time, so trying to make that all work was really pretty hard.
Yeah. So then so you sold the cows. Did you continue to raise crops then, or?
One year, 1983, I didn't plant anything, and it's probably the worst year in my life. It was hard driving by, watching people planting, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And then I started over again on my parents' farm. I started renting it in '84, and then started building back up some equity to buy this place.
Okay.
I worked off the farm at a fertilizer plant, CF Industries, up in Rosemount for a number of years to build up some equity and get to this point. There isn't hardly anybody that owns a farm that hasn't had to work off the farm to make it happen. Either that or their mom and dad had it ahead of time to get them to them. So. Yep.
So then, when you start looking to buy a farm, did you look around on the Minnesota side?
Some, yeah. We looked at different farms over there. I guess this was kind of interesting. Orange Dairyman had a ad in there, and Dean Holden, a local realtor here at the time, had a VHS tape of like 8 different farms from Wisconsin. And I sent for that tape, and we put it on the TV, or put it in the tape player and put it on TV, and then I wrote down a number of farms to look at, and I come over here to look at different farms in this area from that tape. Okay. That's how we ended up over here.
Yeah. Well, and you were by New Prague over there?
Yeah. Newmarket, Elko, actually, straight south of the Twin Cities.
That was a spendier ground over there at the time, right?
Oh yeah, that was they were getting into the housing market pretty good over there.
Yeah.
That was right before like the racetrack over Canterbury Downs and Shakopee went in, and when that went in, the land went up crazy in that area.
Yeah, because the guy that I bought my farm from, that's where he came from.
Yep.
Did you know Mike at all back then?
A little bit, not a lot, but there was a number of people that come from Apple Valley, Lakeville, Prior Lake area that come over here too.
Yeah, yep. And yeah, the land, some of our land around here is as good as anything.
Yep.
There's areas that were way better when they were just dairy, you know, because it was wetter ground or something. But
well, the interesting part about over in Minnesota where I lived is that ground over there was heavy, you know, clay soil.
Yep.
This tractor right here, you hook onto the 5-bottom plow over there, and you made her grunt good in third gear. Third gear over here, you put it at 5-bottom plow in the ground, and you went easy. This soil right here where we live right now is probably some of the best soil there is as far as water holding capacity and ease of tillage. You don't have big lumps in the spring. Like over in Minnesota, you wanted to plow that in the fall no matter how ugly it was because the frost would break the ground up so it would work up good in the spring.
Well, I've been told, whether or not it's true or not, which this neighborhood from, you know, kind of that from 10 or just a little bit north of 10 right there, where along County Road D coming down this way, I've been told some of that ground is as good on a productivity index. You know, like Farm Credit has a rating system or productivity index, that's as good as anything in the country.
Yeah, I've had a lot of corn here, over 200 bushel the acre. And,
Yeah.
And I mean, you go down to Iowa and you get to pay $30,000 an acre for that, and it isn't anywhere close to that up here. So
Yeah, it was. This neighborhood is really good, but then you can get the thing about where we're at is that you can get, 3 miles away, and it's completely different ground.
yep,
It's
I think the glaciers had a lot to do with that.
yeah. So we're in the driftless area, which the last ice age or whatever that just didn't flatten this area. So it's
Yep,
a little bit of everything.
yep,
And I grew up it'd be the same section.
yeah. Well, your dad delivered our mail for years.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, mom and dad's down there. That's really good.
Yep.
So you looked at a bunch of farms. Were they all right around Ellsworth, or were they?
Yeah, they were in this general area. I probably went around about a 10-mile radius or 20-mile radius.
Yep.
This was, when I looked at every one of them, they were more hilly than this one is. This one's probably got some of the only non-highly erodible tillable land in Pierce County, because I've got 40 acres that's non-highly erodible on this farm. When I cracked the hill over here north of our place and come to look at this farm, and I'm going, golly, that's the farm. That's pretty flat. That's a nice land over here. So
Yeah.
and then all the buildings were here to use for dairy operations, so I didn't have to add no money into doing buildings and stuff to get going here, and I really wouldn't have no money extra to do it anyway. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, because it had been a dairy up until 1989, right?
Yep.
So it sat for about a year.
Sat for about a year. Yep.
Okay. And
the roads had sawdust the floor in the barn so that the frost and stuff didn't wreck stuff too bad.
Okay, nothing had buckled.
No.
Okay. So yeah, this was a road farm.
Yep.
And Dorothy
owned it.
Yep.
And then Sam and family ran the farm with Dorothy and her sister.
Yep. Yep.
So they took pretty good care of the land themselves, and I'm the beneficiary of that.
Yeah.
I've went to all no-till now in my farming operation. The last 3-4 years I haven't touched a tillage tool whatsoever, and my yields are just as good as they were before that.
Okay.
Using about 25% of the fuel.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And any of the rains, heavy rains and stuff, there's nothing brown running off the fields like it would be if you tilled it. So
Yep. Yep.
it does work for most, or some people anyway. Works for me.
Yeah. So then, when you moved over here, then did you have to buy a herd of cows?
Yep.
Where'd you get the cows from?
The main herd, about 45 cows, came from Colby, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Then Hooperts, of course, they're the local jockey people around here. They were the ones that knew where things were at, and
Yep.
that's who I got them through.
Okay. Okay.
Then after that, we basically had a closed herd because I raised all my own livestock, bred all AI, so I really didn't have anything coming in from the outside after we got the initial cows in here.
Yep. Yep. So then, you were working out, and did you stay? You kept working out then too,
Yep.
right? So then, was your wife doing a lot of the milking and stuff? And
My wife and family did a lot of chores. My daughters were excellent in the farm with the cattle, and my son ran equipment for me too. So it worked. I had my sister-in-law here for a while that milked with my wife, and had a number of things going on that made us happen. It's a family affair here. This place is.
Yep. Then you had a herdsman for a while too, didn't you?
Yeah, Ben Paps worked for me for a number of years. He did a really good job too, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
He was good with cows, and he was good with machinery too. He did most of the chopping. I did most of the wagon hauling when he was here.
Yeah. Yep.
He would get in the tractor and he'd sit there for the whole afternoon. He'd have to grab a case of Mountain Dew to go with him though, but
Yeah. Yeah. So then you buy the cows, you brought some machinery over, but you weren't milking cows anymore over there, so did you have to buy haying equipment and that kind of stuff when you got here?
yeah, we had to buy a John Deere 1219 hay bine, and Then when Ellsworth Equipment was moving from their west of town deal there, I bought a Gale 600 chopper and 2 wagons at that auction.
Okay.
And a blower to put in, so I did my own. The first year Brian Jardine up here, he chopped for me and stuff so we could get started that year, because we moved here the 15th of May of 90. So I didn't have a lot of time to get everything done. We still planted everything over in Minnesota and then come over here and plant it here because I already rented the ground in Minnesota before I decided to buy this. So
then did you just have that corn and beans over there? And
yep, corn and beans. And luckily the fall of 1990 was nice. We had all of the beans and corn down in Minnesota come over here. I had Jack Knoll pick the corn for me here, picked ear corn and put that in the bins. And then brought my 300 combine all the way over here from Minnesota to do my beans. Got that done, and right after Thanksgiving is when we got the first snow and rain for that fall, and everything was real nice in 90. Then, of course, if anybody remembers, 1991, then Halloween blizzard hit, and we'd have been, if it had been the year I moved over here, I'd have been screwed.
Yeah. Yep.
But everything has to work out to make things happen. I just has to.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it just does.
It just does.
So, yeah. So then you got, Gale 600. That was an older chopper even back then.
Yep.
But that worked pretty good for you?
Yep. The only thing that I did, I upgraded to an 800 then. I always bought something inexpensive. I never bought real bendy choppers or wagons. That got me through. I went to an 800. That went with, instead of 6 knives, 8, and that chopped corn silage better. So then I moved up to a 1060, but that's all we did as far as just kept cheaper. Till the last half dozen years, then I bought a couple of H&S 7+4 wagons, and those were like a blessing to come into having something like that to unload out of it compared to the old wagons.
So then you had manual control, so that's where the 1206 was probably pretty good without a cab.
Yep. And then we went... Then I bought a 1066. That was the next tractor I bought, and I still have that. And then I bought a 1486 to get air conditioning so we could get closed cab and keep out of the dirt.
Yep.
Those are the kinds of things, that just a few upgrades as I could afford to do it.
Yep.
As we went along. I still own all those tractors. I guess I got all antique equipment.
It doesn't seem like that stuff is that old, but it is old. But
yep.
It doesn't seem... Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. So then, when did you start milking here then?
Right away.
Oh, really?
Yep. I cleaned the barn up. I think I had cows before the end of May.
Okay.
I know I had cows before that. That first herd of cows come in before the end of May. And then I bought 20 more from another farm. I don't know, sometime during the summer. I don't remember exactly when, to fill the barn up because it holds 60 cows.
Okay.
And then after that, I bought a few heifers that next summer just to keep up with everything. And then after that, we had our own stuff coming in from what we freshened up from the cows.
Yep.
And then, like I said, we had a closed herd all the time through that after that.
So did you talk to the creamery, or did they approach you? Or because back then Ellsworth was kind of, people wanted to get into Ellsworth pretty bad, I think.
Well, I had both. When I was in Minnesota, I shipped to Hastings.
Okay.
And they came as far as Highway 63 and they wouldn't come here. And I still had a little bit of equity left in Hastings Co-op from when I milked in Minnesota. So I tried to get them to come here, but they wouldn't drive over here. So then I ended up going to Ellsworth at the time.
Okay.
They did come to see me.
Yeah, because around here back then, if you were milking cows Ellsworth or otherwise, you probably wouldn't have went to Summit or O'Galley, but AMPI and Mid-Am.
Mid-Am, yeah.
Was looking for, people, it seems like.
Yep.
But the creamery was a good place, was a good place to go.
Yep. And it was close by. Then I ended up going on the board at the creamery too for 9 years.
Okay.
Towards the end of my milking career. fact, the last day on the board was the last day I had dairy cows, so you couldn't be on the board anymore. But I did finish my 9 years there. I
Okay.
guess 30 days short was what it amounted to.
Yeah. Did you
So,
learn a lot with the board?
oh yeah, it was an interesting deal. Ellsworth Co-op did a lot of changes in the last 10, 12 years, as far as, or I should say 15 years since Paul Bauer was there. I know he's not there anymore, but he did a lot of good things for that creamery and built it up and fixed it up and made it more regulatory in stature so that it wouldn't have problems with OSHA and everything else.
Yep. Yeah. Ellsworth, the creamery, did you ever think that the creamery name would be as big as it is? I mean, it's
Yeah, I've bought curds in Florida and everywhere else from that have Ellsworth cheese curds on it. So
yeah.
Paul Bauer's done a good job of getting the name of that creamery out there.
Yeah.
When they bought Comstock up there, they got the sales crew from Comstock, which helped put that stuff together too.
Okay.
There was 3 people that were selling the cheeses from up there. So then we've been selling Ellsworth Co-op has been selling those cheeses out of there too, and using that same sales team.
Okay.
That's kind of how that started. I don't know. It's good to move it. They're probably up to, I don't know, they're probably up to 30-40% of their curds going kind of directly to customers.
Yeah. Barrels and, weren't super profitable.
Barrels have had their problems with pricing. I think that's been a problem now for about 10, 12 years, where the difference between barrels and blocks have been really, really high a lot of times. I mean, when you start talking $2, $3, $4 a hundredweight different in price, this don't make any sense is what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, and Ellsworth was barrels and then focused strictly on that. Even way back, like when I was a kid, Ellsworth still did their own butter.
Yep. They had vats there when I first started milking here. They still had vats in the back as far as making butter.
Yeah.
They didn't start the cheese curd stuff till what? I suppose that was in the middle 90s when they really went full barrel on that cheese curds with that newer equipment, that dicing equipment.
You could always get curds up there, which...
I think they had stirred curds ahead of time. I wasn't too up to date on what they did before they started what they were doing now.
I just always remember, even in the 80s, you could always get a bag of curds,
Instead of the cut ones like they have now, they were stirred curds, I think.
Okay.
Because they had open top vats in there before they started with the belter that they've got now and the salting system.
Yeah. Yep.
That's been there for quite a few years, since middle 90s, I think. I don't have an exact date when they put those in, but it was after I moved here, I know that.
Well, it was always good to get fresh curds.
Yep.
And it's funny. I mean, now it's a tourist thing. Like, it's a destination where people.
Yep.
And back in the 80s and 90s, I can remember you just went into the office and you might be farmers and milk haulers surrounding you, and you just clerk. Almost, it was just kind of like a side thing. Like, all right, yeah, I'll get a bag of curds from you.
Yep. They just put a couple coolers in, and then you could walk in and grab them.
Yeah.
Now that's send it all over.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Well, their packaging department's big over there. They've got packaging machines now. They started with one, and then they come from the Cranberries area where we went to look at those packaging machines.
Huh.
And then they bought that first one, and now they got the second one in there to make the smaller size bags, so it's better, more efficient at doing them. The older machine would have a hard time doing those 2 and 4 ounce bags. Yep. The cheese curds would get caught in the seal, and then shut the machine down.
Okay.
Where the new one's kind of got a shaking system where it shakes it out a little bit so that they fill easier and they don't pitch off as bad.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they sell a lot of curds.
Yeah, and everybody needs to take a peek at that sometime. It's too bad that 911 happened and it shut down some of the tours that we used to do in the plant because it is cool.
Oh, in egg class, I remember dairy science, we always went through the creamery, and
Yep.
you know, it was just one of those things. I mean, to me even, so I graduated in 96, you graduated in 75, the changes that I've seen, I never thought we would see, and I can't imagine, I mean, to you it's got to be even worse. I mean...
Just doing what we're doing right now is completely nuts. This video.
Yeah. But I think back to, you know, in the 90s, a 50 cow dairy was a good business model.
Yep.
Like, it was a profitable way to farm.
Yep.
And that just kind of went away for the most part. I mean, the farm consolidation in the dairy, is crazy how much it's happened.
Well, and then robotic milking even. I mean,
yeah.
that's come a long way. And I mean, what was it? Almost $1 million to put in these, you know, into robotics. I think it's down to what, 250,000 now per unit?
Yeah, something.
Something like that, but they're still only good for about 40 to 50 cows each unit, to what I've been told.
Yeah.
A day.
Which, on the other hand, if you can replace a hired man, look what a hired man would cost you.
Yep.
You know, so I don't think that the robots are a bad option.
Just that it's a long-term investment, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to be milking cows for a while. If
you're going into that.
Right.
Plus, you got to get them all trained and everything. And I think once they're trained, it's like everything else. You can train a cow to walk into the same stall in the barn, and you can train a cow to walk into robotic milker, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and facilities have, you know, have really updated a lot. Like, I mean, tie stalls. If you had tie stalls with mattresses or cow mats, boy, that was cutting edge. I mean, that was better than stanchions, and you know.
And that's what we had too. We had mats in the barn, and
yeah,
and the cows all were pretty relaxed in our barn. I know that.
Yeah, and tunnel ventilation came along in the 80s.
Yep.
You really thought you had something. Now they build these newer facilities, and then they get more milk just from the facility.
Yeah.
You know, it just the tie stall barn isn't quite as good. Now there is, like, you know, like Brad Aftal down there. That's a very special tie stall barn. He cranks a lot of milk from that. Yep. You know, but yeah, I guess I never thought a 50 cow dairy would just not be, you know,
feasible.
Right. And there's very few left.
Yeah, it's like everything else. It's a percentage of what you can get for profit out of it, and the percentages just keep dropping. So you got to have more and more volume to get enough money to live. Right. And that's what's. And then the machinery, of course. I mean, for this horsepower right now, you're almost $200,000. Right. But the only problem with that new machinery is all the electronics on it. It'll cost you more to fix the electronics than it will to fix the mechanical part of the tractor. Yeah. So that's the scary part about modern agriculture, is everybody's dependent on the computer to make a tractor work. And I know neighbors have had their tractor, one little sensor goes out and it stopped dead in the field and you aren't planting nothing. You can't even get the planter off the tractor. Yeah. Because it stopped dead in its tracks until you figure out what's causing it to stop. Yeah. These, if the battery works and the starter works, I'm running. Right. Do you remember what you paid for this? $7,500. Really? Yep. Okay. Was it pretty low houred at the time? $5,500. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so it was a pretty nice 1206. Yep, it was a nice tractor. Yeah. Yep. When you're talking about calves and stuff, and one day my son was chopping hay with it, and he come in looking like the Jolly Green Giant, so he wasn't too happy that day, but oh well. I'm glad he would do it. Yeah.
Well, I always said cabs, you know, them earlier cabs aren't the greatest, but if you're doing work in the cold and in the fall and stuff, boy, it was awful nice to have.
Yeah, I used to get feed with, or grind feed with this with a heat hauser and haul manure with it, so that wasn't exactly, if you're going into the wind to help, but when you're going with the wind, it didn't help at all, so.
No.
That's the difference. And then I bought the 10 with the cab on it. Then that was a lot better. It had heat at least. And in the summertime, you could close the window when you were going with the wind, so you didn't get coated in hay dust.
Well, and yeah, and then I mean those cabs were hot, but
they kept the sun off. It wasn't as bad as I had a Henniker cab on that. Or I have a Henniker cab on that 10 instead of the AIH one.
Yep,
which is a better cab.
Yeah, that red cab wasn't great.
Not on the 66 series.
No. But you also had this for when it was warm out that, you know. And this, did it always have a muffler on?
Yep. That's the original muffler.
Okay. So many of these just had straight pipes.
I like to hear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I still can hear without hearing aids. I wore muffs too some when you were on it for any of these for a long time.
Yep. Yeah. And this, you had duals on it and everything?
Yep.
Okay. Did it come with the tractor?
No, I had a set. I actually kept the set from the original 1206. I put them on this one.
Okay. So then your folks had a farm over there. You said in, you know, over by Elko, and
yep.
Did then when you moved over here, then did they sell that, or?
Well, they were already in the process of selling land off.
Okay.
I couldn't afford to buy it for operating purposes.
Yep.
So part of the reason I moved over here is just if either was going to not be farming anymore or buy a farm.
Yep.
So we moved over here. I had a house with 11 acres, and we sold that for $75,000 over there. I shouldn't be giving prices, and then I bought this place for $150,000. So
right.
I bought 150 acres here for, you know, for twice as much as what I had 11 acres over there with a house. So
yep.
That's what Lakeville was.
Yeah. So then did your dad ever come over and help you then?
No, my dad passed away in 1988.
Oh, okay. So he
was gone before we moved.
Did he like you farming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the 4th generation of farmers in this family.
Okay.
Probably be the last because nobody else is going to take over this one. So.
Well, you got grandkids, right?
Yeah, I guess I do.
You know,
I got one grandson that's stuck to me like glue over here on the farm right now. So.
Yeah, that's how I was with my grandpa. So.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
You never know.
Never know.
I mean, it can happen, but yeah, that I know when Dad bought his farm, I know my grandpa was, Grandpa moved right to the farm.
Yeah.
You know, him and Grandma put a trailer house on the farm.
Okay.
To be close, you know, and you know, I suppose now the county would probably have an absolute fit about that, but back then it was just like, well, whatever.
Yep. needed somebody to do the work and whatever. He probably was going to help on the farm.
Yeah, well, and Grandpa lived for it. That was.
Well, even when I first started farming in Lakeville over there, we had to put a trailer house on the farm I was renting, and man, it almost took an act of God to do that.
Yeah.
Because that's all was changing over in Minnesota. It was just becoming, well, it was becoming metro area.
Oh, absolutely.
Lakeville is nothing more than a metro area now. There's houses on top of houses there, so.
Yep. Now, did any of your kids want to come back and farm?
Well, my daughter Rachel, the youngest one, she was with me quite a bit here towards the end of our dairy. But she met a fellow down in Iowa, so she moved down to the farm in Iowa. She's a beef farmer down there.
Okay.
I was always hoping she'd find somebody up here, but it didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, well, and it's tough because they're going to have to work out too.
Yep.
And
well, she's a teacher down there along with and her husband's running the farm full time. So
Okay.
put up a finishing barn and stuff like that. So I guess he's dedicated to being a beef farmer down there.
Yeah, running steer. Is he cow calf too, or just?
Yeah, he's got some cow calf, but he's also a contract beef feeder down there in Iowa.
Oh,
He's in
okay.
northwestern Iowa, south of Worthington, about an
Okay.
hour.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of cattle that, you know.
They do have some insane ground down there, though, as far as depth of their soil.
Yeah.
I don't know how deep their topsoil goes, but it's deep.
Yeah.
They can take drought there like crazy, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Over the last number of years, the last half a dozen years, I've watched some pretty dry weather down there and still have some, 200 and 250 bushel corn down there, too. So.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You ever go down and help them out at all, or I think
No.
you got enough to do?
I got enough to do here to get mine
Yeah.
done. About the time I'm done with mine, they usually starts a little before me in the spring, and he's usually done before me in the fall, just because their seasons are, well, they got better, higher temperature, a little higher temperature down there. They average about 10 degrees warmer than we do here.
Yep. Yep.
And if we're 80 here, they're 90 there. And if we're 90 here, they're usually 95 down there. So.
Yep.
And then in the springtime and or the winter, they have colder days just like everything, but they usually average 10 degrees warmer, and the spring's the same thing.
Yeah. So how long so when you're milking here, and you were working off the farm, when did you finally quit working off the farm?
2005.
Okay.
That's when I figured we could make it all happen here.
Yep.
And we did. We had moved the herd. We actually went from 60 to about 100 cows milking every day. So we switched cows in the barn that helped pay for Ben, my hired man, and stuff like that. Keep the cash flow going.
Did you have enough feed?
Yeah, we were pretty close. I'd buy a little bit of hay for the heifers. I'd buy the poorer quality stuff or whatever. Dave Esterby sold hay for quite a while over there.
Yep.
And his son. I'd buy some of their poorer square bales to feed to the heifers. They'd always get the leftovers from the barn that I pushed out, plus then I'd give them some of that hay. I chopped half the corn, and then we combined. We maybe would have to buy corn for 2 months out of the year in the fall to finish up before a new crop came in.
Okay.
But we were running at 270 acres, so it was right tight on the amount of feed we had. But the farm always produced good, so it was good to get. The worst was probably that year we had a frost on the 21st of June. Nothing but, I don't know if you remember that one or
The
not.
Father's Day frost, that was like 92 or 93.
First day of summer, I walked out of the barn in the morning, on Sunday morning, and smelled frozen corn. And I said, Lord, I don't think I want to go to church today. I'm not too happy. But, yeah, it was interesting because I had cultivated corn the day before, and the corn I cultivated froze harder than the stuff I hadn't.
Yeah.
In fact, the stuff I cultivated was completely brown.
Yep.
The corn that didn't kill the stem, so the corn grew back up out of the stem. But I chopped about 80% of my corn that year, just because of, and then what I picked, I didn't pick till Thanksgiving, and it was still 40% moisture.
Yeah, that was, gosh, I can't remember if that was 92 or 93. But yeah, there were a couple of years.
Right in the early 90s there.
Yeah, there was a stretch in there because, yeah, we had that late corn, early snow there in 91.
Yep. I think it was 92 or 90, probably 92 or that frost happened. I think it was right on top of each other, if I remember right.
Yeah, and it had snowed. Even I remember when Bill Clinton got elected, that there was that night, because I picked up, I'd bought a 1980 Arctic Cat, and me and Mike Roll went and picked it up and threw it in the cattle trailer, and I was able to ride it that night. Now, so election night would have been early November.
Yep.
So yeah, it was. I remember 92 or 93, pigs were aborting and stuff because the corn had gotten moldy.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I bought that year after that frost, when I bought corn from Kevin Lindstrom, the corn was so light test weight that I couldn't fill the wagon up or it'd blow out of the wagon driving home. I mean, that stuff was like 40, 45 pound test weight.
Yeah.
So we've had some interesting years since being here.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. But farming in the 90s was relatively decent, though. I
Yep.
mean, it was profitable.
Yep.
You know. Then we started to see, it seems like, to me, and just what I always thought, when they put the milk price on the CME,
Yeah.
that caused volatility.
Well, people could play with the markets.
Right.
Or, you know, I should say rich people that wanted to, they could sell a few loads at a cheaper price or dump them on the market, run the price down, then quick buy back a bunch of loads for cheaper, you know, cheaper than what it was, and then screw everybody in between, and that's happened quite a bit.
Yeah, the milk price was stable. It was very stable for years. It was, you know, you just didn't see a big change.
$1 or $2 one way or the other at the most.
And then, boy, it got to where it was.
It could be $12 or $20.
Yeah, and I remember what, 02, 03, 990 base, you know, that was tough.
Yep.
That was, you know, when you moved over here, what was milk? Probably 13, 14?
Yeah, something like that. And then, be honest with you, the second year we went down to $10 something.
Okay.
So that did kind of tighten me up pretty tight here for just buying the farm. But then it did come back, so that helped.
Yeah. Yeah.
You still had to be prudent in what you were doing. It didn't matter.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, you could buy decent equipment on a small herd of cows.
Well, the big problem now is there is nobody. There is no used equipment on the small side.
Right.
I mean, this is a puny tractor.
Right.
For this, you'd use this on the auger all the time on any of the other farms now. You wouldn't even, you couldn't even haul half the wagons around here.
Right. Yeah, it's really changed. And like I said, well, I remember hearing one time, was it probably 07 or somewhere in there, we had a pretty good milk price.
Yep.
And I think Tom Holdorf said something along the lines of, maybe it was 70 new hay binds or disc binds that they sold or something in one year. And now they probably, they sell 7 a year.
Yeah.
Like it just...
Well, yeah, there's just... Everybody, when I first started here, there was a pile of dairies in Heartland Township, and now I don't know if there's 1 or 2.
So who would be left in Heartland is Stan Johnson still milking?
Yep.
Is he Heartland?
Yep.
Okay. And then I don't know if Webster's would be Heartland.
I think they're Heartland, yeah.
So then Jimmy Hoschel would be too, right?
I don't know if he's right on the line. Jimmy Hoschel might be still in Heartland thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's right next to Webster's, so.
They're probably in Heartland. Yeah.
Yep. That'd be the only 3 that I know of that's even here. Because Hendricks sold his cows 1.5 or 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
He's Salem, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, well.
Kurt Nelson had some cows up until, what, 1.5 years ago or so. That's about it.
Well, I always say, like, you go down the roads, so County Road D, when I was a kid, I rattle off all the farms that milk cows there, and there's no dairies on County Road D.
Nope.
And then County Road V, there used to be a lot of dairies on County Road V, and there would be none on V.
None.
And then you'd go County Road C. And I mean, County Road C was all dairy farms.
Yep.
There's no dairies left on.
Nope.
And double D, I guess you'd have brand.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
Like it's crazy to think how that changed.
They've all consolidated to a few big dairies now.
Yeah. And which for us was a good thing that our location, because we're close to the river. So grain markets were always okay.
Yep.
You know, we always had a decent basis and plenty of markets.
Yep.
where there's a lot of places, if they didn't have livestock, there really wasn't.
Yeah, if you had, the bases have been hard on people, you know, anywhere away from where we're at. Being 12 miles from Red Wing here is a pretty nice thing.
Yeah. And the ethanol plants changed things a little bit, but even after they had the ethanol plants rolling, Red Wing was usually still better.
Well, the bases that even up at Stanley, I mean, you think it's close by, but it's really a 2-hour drive from here.
Right.
And I mean, Red Wing is, to the bridge from right here is 12 miles.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then the Red Wing is another, well, I suppose it's what, 2 miles, 2.5 to dump the grain. So
Right,
it's probably about 14, 15, maybe 14 miles gets you right down to the terminal.
Right. So that part was good that we had that. So, and that happened a lot where there's a lot of guys that milk cows until they quit milking cows.
Yep.
And then we're able to just transition to, you know, crop farm, because as the debt load has gone down, obviously you weren't going to make as much money crop farming your land that you milk 50, 60 cows with, but it was enough.
Yep.
And guys were able to kind of finish.
Well, these bins here, I built them after I stopped milking.
Yeah.
Just to give me flexibility. 2 reasons. Well, when I quit milking, I started working again to keep my health insurance, because the health insurance is so expensive, which everybody knows.
Yep.
So I worked at the creamery then for 7 years after I quit milking. I just retired a 1.5 years ago. I built these bins so that I had flexibility both for when I sold the grains and how I could get my loads unloaded. Because when you're in the fall, you can't get a truck in here. The neighbors are all big farmers, and they got the truck coming to them, and I'm on the last end to get picked up. Maybe in the morning, maybe at night, and maybe. Well, I needed to be able to run, so I built the bins. And then you gain the basis difference. In the fall is always ugly.
Yep.
And then in the spring, it's always a lot better. I mean, you gain 20, 30, 40 cents a bushel, 40 cents on beans and 20, 30 on corn, just for having it till spring or even after the fall harvest.
Yeah.
So.
No, it worked out good for a lot of guys to do that. I think now we're going to see the biggest consolidation in farms within the next few years that we've ever seen, probably, though, because a lot of guys in your generation now, they're quitting completely.
Yep.
And a young guy can't just come in and take it over and compete.
Nope.
That's the problem, that you're going to see farms get really big.
Yep.
I think.
And then it's hard for a young guy to come in, because they don't want to work with the old equipment as much as used to, I don't think. Some of them don't. I mean, some of them haven't had enough training to know how to fix stuff either to make it work. And then this newer equipment, and I mean newer, I mean even 20-year-old equipment has a bunch of electronics on it again. And then once that electronics is poor, the machine ain't worth much.
Yeah, some of this stuff, if you're handy, you know, for a young farmer, if you're handy, you can get somewhere that way.
Yep.
You know, or like a lot of the stuff I rent is smaller stuff. Well, the smaller stuff is never going to yield the way the big fields will.
No.
But if you do it right, you can make money at that.
Yep.
But, you know, some people, I guess if you want to farm, you better really, how bad do you want to do it?
You got to wanna.
Right.
Bad wanna.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen automatic. I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot of hours this boy put in to make this happen.
Yeah.
There was a lot of times it was 3-4 hours of sleep because I was too busy fixing, taking care of animals or something before the next day still comes at the same time.
Yeah.
There's only way you get more done is to put more hours in.
Yeah.
And it takes away from sleep is what it amounts to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got to think ahead. You got to be forward thinking. You got to have parts on hand, because at 8 o'clock in the evening, if you don't have a couple bearings when you're working on something, you got to wait till the next morning at 8 o'clock to get them, and then you don't have it fixed. So I always had parts on hand. I knew what I needed. Belts and bearings I had hanging around quite a bit.
Yeah.
best friend in any farmer is the blue tip wrench, which is a torch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a welder.
Yep. No, well, on a dairy farm, you better know how to do some fixing, because you can't afford to, I mean, number one, to hire somebody to do it all, but to number two, like, the stuff doesn't break Monday through Friday.
Uh-uh.
You know?
Nope. You got to be able to actually, like knowing how to do electrical stuff, fixing capacitors on motors, stuff like that. All of that stuff I did.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I crawled up in a silo and fixed a silo motor with a flashlight at 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Oh, and in the winter
especially working out, that was, I'd come home at 5 o'clock in the evening and it was already dark all winter long. So you'd get chores done, and then up the silo you want to fix something.
Yeah. Yeah, that, oof. A lot of time fixing that kind
Memories?
of stuff. Yeah. And it's cold, you know.
Yep.
And
it's a good thing cold didn't bother me too bad for years, because I was in it.
yeah. So then if you graduated in 78.
5.
Or 75, okay. So 78 you got married.
Yep.
So 75, the farm economy and farming looked awesome, probably.
Well, my first 1974 is when they opened up like Russia and stuff for export. And the first time I sold my own beans, I sold them for $9 a bushel. I think it was 1974. And the corn was like $4 a bushel.
Yeah.
1974. Now corn ain't even $4 a bushel today.
Right.
This tractor brand new was what, $6,500 when it was originally made?
Yeah.
Maybe 7, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, now the damn thing is $200,000 with
Right.
$4 corn, folks.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So yeah, I mean, so you probably couldn't wait to get out of school to farm.
I was raising a few pigs back there, and I sold a truckload of feeder pigs for $60 a piece.
Huh.
I thought I was dying
Oh,
went
yeah.
to heaven.
So then when the 80s hit, I mean, that had to be hard. Like,
Well, it was a whole change, because milk price had went from $9.50 to $12.50 in early 80s, but the interest rate went from 8.5% to 23.5%.
right.
When I had my financial review from, well, it was PCA back then,
Yep.
they liked, I was making money in 78 and 79 because the interest rates weren't insane, and you could make your payments.
Yep.
But by the time you got to 1981 and 82, well, cash rent had went up because everybody in farming was going goofy then for rent and everything else, and then the cost of interest went up, so then you couldn't make the payment.
Yeah.
I mean, you took all your payment ability away with the interest rate going. I mean, when you go from 9% to 23, that over triples your interest rate.
Well, and so then you're not really getting anywhere with the principal, and prior to this, if you just were making your payments, as long as you own the land and stuff, and or equipment or cattle or anything, everything was going up so fast that you're like, well, we're gaining equity.
Yep.
But you weren't gaining equity at that point because things devalued.
Devalued, you're right. Because I sold that first 1206, I had an auction, and I sold the bigger equipment off. Well, I bought the tractor for, I think, about $7,200 back then when I bought it, but it sold for $5,500
Yeah.
at the auction. So
Yeah.
did make it by.
Might have to see here. So then you had the auction, sold all that stuff off. You kept some stuff?
Yeah, just smaller equipment I kept behind, and then I guess I always had in mind I was going to start back up again.
Okay.
I kept enough to keep the banks happy, I guess.
Yeah.
But I sold the bigger stuff, chopper. I had a Gale 600 chopper and a couple of wagons back then too, because I chopped at a harvester at the farm I rented that I could use for haylage and stuff. So But I sold that stuff off just because I had no need for it. The cows were gone, so.
Yeah. And then I mean, yeah, and that 1206, that was a pretty expensive tractor. So,
Yep.
you know, if you weren't going to be farming, it's pretty hard to make that payment working a job.
Well, I didn't have a job at the time. I had to find one too, so.
Yeah.
I had 2 kids and then had to take care of that too, so. And
Right.
I found the job at the fertilizer plant, and that started my regeneration, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty much didn't own much of nothing then in 1982. After I had the auction, I had just a few little pieces and stuff.
But then you started renting your dad's land again in 84?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Then my trailer house ended up going to a farm over by Meesville where I worked extra hours there I had 2 jobs, a farm job there, I milked cows there, so I've milked cows just about my whole life, so.
Okay.
So I worked at that farm there, and then I ended up buying the house in Lakeville again, back by Mom and Dad, so.
Yep.
And then the house was run down. I fixed that all up and made $25,000 on that, and that's what I brought back here, so.
Yeah. Which a $25,000 down payment on a $150,000 farm was decent. That was, you know.
That's got me in here.
Right. And at the time, they were looking for people to buy farms because there were farms for sale.
Yep.
Now it seems like, can you imagine today if you looked and, oh yeah, there's all kinds of farms. It just doesn't happen.
No. Well, like I said, in 20-mile radius, that Dean Holden had 8 farms on that VHS tape.
Right. And Barry Hager had farms.
Well, yeah, he probably did, but I didn't know him from Adam at that time.
Yep. So you didn't know, so in 90 there, I guess Hager's wasn't for sale yet, I don't think.
No, I went to his auction.
Yep.
When they sold the cows.
Yep. But, you know, it's kind of funny, you know, yeah, speaking of Barry's farm, you know, and you said that that farm that you were renting had a harvester.
Yeah.
If you saw a farm with a harvester like that, harvester was valuable.
Yep.
Like that added, like if this farm would have had a harvester on it, they probably would have wanted another 20 grand more for it, right?
Probably, yep.
So did any of the farms you looked at have a harvester?
I don't think so. No, none of them did.
Did you like the one that you used?
Yeah, I liked it. It was only a Hercules unloader, so it had a little bit of a problem starting up when you were filling.
Yeah.
But after you got it running, you got the cavity and it run just fine.
Yep.
You had to make sure you run that thing a couple times a day when you were filling it, or you would find yourself pretty bound up.
Yeah. Yep.
So the cows got extra feed on the days when you were filling.
Yeah. Well, if that was a Hercules, was that silo a blue top then?
Yes, it was a blue top.
Okay. Yeah, that was, like I said, it was a
20 by 60.
Okay.
And that barn was a 45 cow barn. I had one of I didn't test officially because it cost more money, but I owner sampler at the time. Yep. But I still had one of the highest herd averages in Scott County at the time with that herd.
Yeah.
So I had good cows. In fact, some of them were from my uncle's farm that had sold out back in '68. I was kind of happy to have those cows.
Okay.
So there's some family tradition in that part of it. So
that farm today, is it still there, or is it?
No.
Is it houses?
Houses, yep. Yep, it's all houses. That was really good land on that farm too. That raised really good crops.
So you rented the land and the barn?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the barn was cost me $500 a month, but the land was going up to $120 an acre rent, which was an enormous amount of rent back then.
And there was no way to buy that farm then?
No.
Okay.
Nope, that was probably at $2,000 an acre back then.
Yeah.
And maybe now, I don't even know. He didn't want to sell it anyway, so it didn't matter. So.
Okay.
But I mean, land in the area. In the mid-70s, I could have bought a farm over there if I'd had any down payment for probably $1,800.
Yep.
That was 1975, right out of school. I was trying to buy a farm at that point that I didn't have no cash to do it. So.
Yeah. Yep.
I needed $9,000-$10,000 down payment to buy the farm, and that wasn't going to happen. So.
Yeah. Well, it worked out though.
Yep. I'm glad to come over here.
Yeah. Oh, I love where we live.
Yep. This is great. Coming over here, I couldn't imagine how pretty the trees are compared. Minnesota is all oak trees. Over here, you got sugar maples, and
Yeah.
everybody brags about New England. I come over here, I go, I don't need to go to New England to see that.
No. No, I like I said, we don't have as big of fields around here, but we have good land, smaller fields. Well, there's a reason why there's still a lot of farmers around here.
Yeah, because they're productive.
Because you didn't need to farm. You know, I had a guy one time give me a hard time because I wasn't a very big farmer, and I kind of laughed, and I said, "You mean you need that many acres to make a living?"
Yep.
It's
well, how
all
big
right.
do you have to be efficient? I've been saying that for the dairy industry for years too. You know, the discussion from the universities have always been get big to be efficient. No, I think you need to be efficient and not get big. You don't need, if you need to be really big to be efficient, I don't think you're not doing a very good job being a dairy farmer.
Well, if expanding only meant adding the cows because you had the capacity for the cows, well, then it wasn't a big deal. But now to build a dairy operation is so expensive, construction costs, but also getting permission and manure pits.
Well, the big problem is if you have an accident with manure, you got a major problem.
Yeah.
When you're that big, you're storing it all liquid to start with, and then you're trying to spread it. I don't even know how many acres they got to spread. These dairies that they're building, they're arguing. I mean, they're wasting more time arguing over trying to get the permits than they are doing their work.
Yeah.
I mean, you're becoming a big business that's really not. You're not family anymore. You can say you are, but you're not. I mean, you're just arguing. You got to argue with the neighbors and you argue with everybody, and it's not worth it. In my mind, it ain't.
Yeah, the big dairy thing. So when every now and then I miss the way it used to be dairying, where there were small farms all over.
We had somebody to talk to too, besides.
Yeah, but there's no part of me that drives by one of the really large dairies and goes, man, I'd like to do that.
Well, I've worked the big business world too. And that's not, you know what, that's not a lot of fun either.
Yeah.
Because then you get to deal with you get to deal with bad people as much as you do with good people.
Yeah.
And even if the bad people are only 5 to 10% of the population, that becomes part of your operation once you're big.
Yeah. It just seems like it's a lot of headaches for something that at the end of the day, what's it valued at?
Yep.
You know, that's the problem that with livestock, getting too much money into livestock is facilities don't carry a lot of value.
No.
Secondhand. If so, you invest all that money into it, and I mean, the appreciation that happened on this farm has nothing to do with the barn.
Nope.
Or any of the outbuildings. It's 100% to do with the land.
Yep.
So that's where the big livestock thing just.
Well, once you write the check, it's worth half of what it was when they drive out the driveway.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but that's the fact. That's why that's why as far as that's why we didn't do nothing big. I mean, as far as changing buildings or whatever here, just because I didn't want to lose my value.
Yeah.
Because you can get rid of the value of your land really quick if you build something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's where I worry about the livestock. Well, and that's why livestock got so big as it did, is because a lot of guys got into this, and then the only way to keep it going is continued expansion. So once you're into that, then it's...
If you're in prison?
Well, to some, yeah. I mean, and some guys got big because they really wanted to. And there are some guys that that just wanted to do it. But yeah, some of them I don't think originally intended it.
They got caught in a trap.
Yeah.
And it is a trap. Hate to tell you, but it is a trap. See, right now I've got flexibility where if you're caught in that expansion thing with buildings, you're stuck.
Yeah, well, 'cause,
you either got to keep going or you don't have anything.
right.
And if you gave up all your land some of these guys had stuff paid for before they did this stuff, and now they don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're going to go to their graves with debt, and they're not going to be able to live on it. They're going to have any money to spend off of that other than a salary.
Which, like I said, at the end of the day, is what for?
What for? Yeah.
That's what but, and like I said, there are guys that did it because that's what they love. They love big milking cows or, big into hogs or etc.
Yeah, if I'd had some extra help, I'd have loved to play the game with embryo transfer and some of that stuff to get, better cattle. My cows were good. They produced good, but I didn't go after big production because it burns out the cows and you have more vet bills. And I decided that wasn't the main way of doing it either.
Well, and then as it turns out, with sex semen and that, the genetics aren't near as big of a deal as they used to be, where, the registered cattle business just isn't what it was.
No.
And,
Nope.
Did you have any registered?
Well, I guess I could have registered everything because when I was on DHIA, I had family records back in the cattle for years.
Yep.
Between, AI and everything else. But I could have technically, back then, you could have registered just about everything. But it just takes time.
Yeah, I know.
And I
had registered cattle and I let it lapse.
It just takes time.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays with pictures and stuff, it'd have been a little easier, I guess. But if you guys sit there and draw things on them and keep track of all of it and stuff, I give up on the AI stuff, not AI, but testing, just because the prices were getting poor enough that cost of the testing every month would pay for a protein bill, and that was worth more to feed the cows than it was to test. So
yeah, yep.
You got paid what's in the bulk tank, not what's on a test sheet.
Yeah, oh yeah. No,
so I had the last couple of years I didn't test anymore either.
No, so then you decided to quit the dairy.
Well, like I said, I think I told you before we started this, we were probably looking at $70,000 worth of investment fixed stuff. And I'm at the point where I was getting close to retire anyway, so I figured instead of spending the money, we'll just not do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Yeah, so after the cows were gone, did you miss the cows?
I miss them some every day.
Okay.
I enjoyed cattle.
But you got some beef cattle.
Yeah, I play with them. I still have a few that walk up to me and like me. So beef cattle don't like you as good as dairy cattle do. So
No.
The calves, when they're born, they run like deer, and that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of our cows were kind of pets, I guess.
Yeah.
To be
honest, you have
with
named?
you. Yeah, every cow had a name. I always numbered them because I could remember numbers better than names. But when I have all gals, my wife and 3 daughters, they named everything. So I said, okay, you name them.
Yeah.
Just as long as you can eat those named ones, I said, you're all right.
Yeah. So, yeah, looking back, I mean, at least it was a good way of life.
Well, I wouldn't give it up.
Yeah.
I'm not sad by anything I've done. I feel pretty proud of being able to make something like this happen from almost nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish kids did have an opportunity to do this, because when I grew up, I was on the dairy farm with my dad, and I always wanted to have a farm to raise my kids on, which I did.
Yeah.
Because I could work with my family, be with my family, and train my family.
Yep.
I could teach them how to work and what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
And then they're doing really good outside of being home with Dad. So.
Yeah.
And Mom's proud of that too. My wife was as much a part of this operation as I was.
Yep.
In fact, when I worked out, she was the only one here. And when I first started in the 90s, these salesmen would come in and they wouldn't talk to my wife. And I told those salesmen, I said, if you want to sell anything on this farm, you better be talking to the gal on the farm, because she knows what's going on as much as me.
Yeah.
And they started figuring out that she was just as important as I was.
Yep.
I think the girls have done better. I've had the girls coming in from like River Falls and stuff that had helped me some that would come in and milk once in a while. They were better workers than the guys, honestly.
Yep. No, women tend to be really good with livestock.
Well, they're the motherly instinct part of it.
Yeah.
Because with calves and the cows, it's all, if you're not observant when you're walking through your barn, any of your barns, you got dead animals before you know they're dead. You got to watch animals, and once you know them, you know when they're fit, when they're sick, and they're not. And if you catch it early, you can treat them pretty simple. But if they're already sick and down, or down and out, you got a headache already.
Yep.
That was one of the things that helped me and all of us, is we could see animals when they were kind of sick instead of when they were really sick.
Yeah.
That's what saved a lot of animals here.
Oh yeah.
I was always in the business to keep animals alive.
Well, I always saw that if you saw a dairy farm that bought a lot of cows, it generally wasn't sustainable.
No.
You needed your own replacements.
Yep.
Like, you should be buying cattle for, you might buy cattle for a few years starting out.
Yep.
But after a certain point, you should have
replacements.
And the guys that never ever got ahead with that, and that's what bailed me out when I sold the cow. Or, well, I didn't say bail me out, but it was the best time I sold when I sold in 08 was I had such a group of heifers around there I got good price for the cows, but when I had all those heifers to sell, that's what really, that's what paid to have cash cropping equipment and do the stuff I did.
Here.
Yeah.
When I sold it to cows, I still had a whole pile of heifers.
Yeah.
Even when I freshened, I freshened up the extra ones that I sold 85 cows in May, and then I refreshened heifers all summer, and I had like 55 cows by December again. Then I sold them in January, and that's when I completely quit. And then I still had heifers coming in, so I sold heifers for another 2 more years, and that's what helped me get everything redone, bends and all that stuff here. So
yeah. Well, wrapping it up, I got thinking about this with the 1206. So when you went to get it, because you needed a bigger tractor.
Yep.
Than what you had. 'Cause you had a 1650, 1850s?
No, 1955, but that one wasn't big enough either.
Yeah, because they're what? Not quite, are they 100?
Right, 100 horse, yeah.
Were you looking for a 1206 because you had a 1206?
Yeah, and I knew they were a good tractor.
So was it a good feeling when you got a 1206 again?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yep, it was a good tractor.
Yeah. Yep, and I'm surprised as they're not super common. I forget if was there 7,500 or 8,000 of them made or something
like that. Yeah.
But there were a few around our area.
Yep.
I mean, surprisingly enough, there were quite a few. And
well, they were at the time. John Deere didn't have an equal to it as far as flexibility.
No, a 5010 horsepower wise was similar, but they were not.
They were a big clunker.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be smart, Alec, but you try to maneuver a 5010 or a 5020 around the cow yard, didn't work too good. That thing did.
Yep.
I mean, the cubic inches on a John Deere were bigger, and if you took care of them, the motor probably lasted a little longer. I mean, there's a lot of people that got 10, 12,000 hours off it, but that tractor there if you take care of it, it does a nice job for you.
Yeah, and really it wasn't until John Deere came out with the 4320 and if you look, so that the 4320 became super popular once it came out, and they only built it 2 years. But then if you look at the 4430, became the next. That was when the 30 series came out. The 4430 sold way more than any of the other 30 series.
Well, the 4430 or the 4230 or all of them was the first time they had the same kind of shifting as this, as far as the gear ratios.
Well, and to have that small frame, big horsepower with dual PTO.
Yep.
And was this one always dual PTO or?
Yeah, it's always been.
Okay, because some of them I think had 1,000 only, but
very few.
But yeah, most are.
Because 1,000, when this came out, there wasn't many 1,000 RPM things.
No.
Most of it was 540.
Yeah.
So I mean, a few choppers, but a lot of the 600 Gales were 540 PTO.
Yep.
I mean, I bought all 1000s, the ones that just luckily had all 1000s. But I mean, Most of them were 540s.
Yeah.
And the balers and everything you ever run was 540.
Yep.
So if you didn't have a 540, you were screwed.
Yep. No, they were a really a great tractor that way. They could do, like I said, all those 44s were the same way. They were big enough. They had big power.
Yep.
They could do the big jobs, but they could also do the small stuff.
Yep.
And
most of the time, people didn't have enough money to spend on, at that time when you're running a 35 to 50 Caldera, you didn't have the money to have two different tractors.
no.
So you had, okay, you maybe bought a bigger manure spreader. Well, you like to have, instead of a 656 or 3020 on that manure spreader, putting your 4430 or a 1206 on there, and then you could pull it around the field too.
Yep.
Then if it's a little muddy, you go out there with a little tractor, and then you're stuck.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different reasons for having that tractor.
Yep.
And then like a 5010 or a 5020, you go out in a muddy field with that thing, and you did get stuck.
Oh yeah.
I'm not trying to be smart, but that was just the way it was.
Yeah, having big power. And I can remember when we got the 1466. My grandpa thought that was just the biggest tractor ever.
Yeah.
He's just like, what do you need something like that? And now you look at it, it's baby. Well,
so. I can still remember that first 1206 my dad got. I get my dad to disc a field for me, and I had duals on it and stuff. And he went across that field the first time with a 20-foot disc, and he had the biggest smile on his face I ever seen in my life. He said, "That's quite a tractor, kid."
Yeah. Yep. So, all right. Well, thanks, Paul.
You bet.